When most people hear the phrase live according to nature, a pretty specific image comes to mind. A little house in the mountains, a vegetable patch out the back. Definitely no smartphones. There's this romantic idea of a simpler life, closer to the earth, away from all the noise and complexity of the modern world. Something more honest and more real. It's a lovely idea. It also has absolutely nothing to do with what the Stoics were talking about. Zeno of Citium, the man who first laid down the Stoic instruction to live artaphusin, or according to nature, was a philosopher who lived in a city. He taught in a public marketplace. He moved in trade, commercial and political circles. The philosophy he built was specifically designed for people trying to navigate the messy, complicated, imperfect reality of a human existence. He wasn't telling anyone to go back to the woods and hug a tree. He was making a claim about the deep structure of what it means for a human being to truly flourish, about what we're actually built for. And that claim's considerably more interesting and considerably more demanding than anything a vegetable garden can give you. So today we're going to unpack what he actually meant. And I think you'll find, as I did when I first properly looked into this, that there's a lot more philosophy packed into that little phrase than first appears. And what it's really asking of you is both harder and more useful than growing your own food. So, welcome back to the Stoic Mind Mechanic. My name is Tim Howell. Now, we're deep into the core principles block of this video series, working through the foundational ideas that hold the whole Stoic system together. Last time we explored the preferred indifference, the Stoic idea that health, wealth and status are genuinely worth pursuing, but they're not the thing that real flourishing depends on. Today we're tackling the foundational ethical instruction of the entire Stoic school. Live according to nature. Now, the Stoic account of this operates on three levels. There's the universal nature, human nature and individual nature. And the full meaning only clicks into place when you've got all three of those clearly in view. So we're going to build each one in sequence, and we'll start with the biggest. In an earlier video, when we mapped out the overall architecture of Stoicism, we introduced the concept of the logos, the rational principle that the Stoics believed orders the entire universe. Not a personal god sitting somewhere outside the cosmos pulling the strings and levers, but more like the deep rational structure of reality itself. The reason things are the way they are, the principle that makes the universe make sense rather than just being random noise. So when Zeno said live according to nature, part of what he meant was live in alignment with that rational order. Don't exhaust yourself fighting the structure of reality. Understand how things actually are, not how you wish them to be, and act from that understanding. The Stoic philosopher Chrysippus put it this way: live consistently with nature, in line with both the common nature of the cosmos and with human nature, and let everything you do spring from virtue and reason. That word consistently matters here. This isn't a one-off adjustment, it's a sustained daily practice of bringing your choices into genuine alignment with the rational order of things. The Stoics call this homologia, living in agreement and in harmony, without a gap between what you know is right and what you actually do. At this cosmic level, living according to nature means a few things in practice. It means accepting that the workings of fate, the fact that everything eventually ends, or the unpredictability of the world can't be changed, and you'd therefore be wasting energy fighting it. It means recognizing that the universe isn't out to get you. It's ordered and rational. And rather than assuming it owes you a better arrangement, you bring your reason into alignment with that order. Marcus Aurelius keeps coming back to this in Meditations. At one point he writes something that sounds simple but is actually doing a fair bit of philosophical heavy lifting. He says, the universe is is transformation. Life is opinion. All things by nature change, decay, and pass away, but the capacity to reason rightly, to act justly, to bear what must be borne, that endures because it is in the very principle by which the universe is ordered. So if you read that again slowly, when you exercise your reason well, you're not just pursuing a personal preference. You're participating in the deep structure of reality itself. Your specific human life in that moment is expressing the same rational principle that organizes the entire cosmos. So that's the first layer, large, cosmological, and once it properly lands, genuinely life-changing in terms of how you understand your own existence. Now let's step down from the cosmic to the human. What is it that's distinctively natural to a human being? The Stoics had a very clear answer to this, and it has two parts. The first part is reason. Human beings are unique among all living creatures, being capable of rational self-governance. We can examine our own thoughts before we act on them. We can question whether our desires are actually well-founded, and we can update our beliefs when evidence points somewhere new. We can choose deliberately to override an impulse in the service of something we've decided matters more. No other animal does this. It's the defining characteristic of human nature, and it's exactly what the Stoics built their ethics around. So, living according to human nature in this first sense means living as a rational being, not just a reactive one. Using the capacity that makes you genuinely different from every other creature on earth, and using it well, which means in the service of genuine understanding and genuine goods, not just in the service of rationalizing what you already wanted to do. But here's the part that popular presentations of Stoicism almost always leave out, and I think it might be an important thing the tradition has to offer. The second part of human nature, as the Stoics understood it, is sociality. We're not just rational, we're rational social creatures. We're borrowing Aristotle's phrase, which the Stoics adopted and expanded upon, political animals. Not in the narrow sense of people who care about elections, but in the deeper sense. We're creatures whose nature is only fully expressed in community, in relationships, in the shared life and mutual obligations of the social world. Cicero captured this beautifully when he said, "We are not born for ourselves alone. Our country has a claim on us. Our friends have a claim on us. And since everything on earth is, in a sense, made for the use of human beings, and human beings are made for each other, so that we can genuinely help one another, in this we ought to follow nature as our guide." We are made for each other. So living according to human nature means honoring that, not because it's an obligation imposed on you from outside, but because it's an expression of what you most fundamentally are. The person who withdraws entirely from social life, who lives only for themselves, or who treats obligations to others as an imposition on their freedom, that person, the Stoics argued, is living against their nature, however comfortable it might feel. And this is why Stoicism can't be reduced or compared to a self-improvement program. It's not primarily about making you more resilient or more productive or more at peace with your own stuff. It's about becoming the kind of person whose reason and sociality are both fully expressed in your inner life and in your relationships, in your private practice, and in your public obligations. Human nature is rational. Human nature is social. Living according to human nature means both always, simultaneously. The third level is the most personal, and it's the level where the instruction becomes actionable for you, specifically. The Stoics developed a framework preserved most fully in Cicero's Diophaces, drawing on the philosopher Panetius, called the doctrine of the four personae, the four roles. The idea is that every person occupies multiple roles at once, and living according to nature means fulfilling the specific obligations of each role with integrity. The first role is universal. You are a rational human being sharing in the common nature of all people. This is the cosmopolitan dimension, your obligations to every other rational creature, simply because you share in the same humanity. The second role is individual. You have a specific character, specific capacities, a specific temperament, history, and background. These aren't obstacles to living well, they're the actual material your life has to be built from. So if you're somebody naturally drawn to intellectual work, you're not living according to your individual nature by suppressing that inclination to fit someone else's idea of a worthwhile life. If your real gifts lie in care and relationships, you're not living according to your nature by chasing status in areas that require a completely different kind of person. Third role is circumstantial. The particular social position you actually find yourself in, whether that be a family member or as a citizen, as a colleague, as a friend, each of these brings specific obligations that are part of living well in your actual circumstances, rather than some ideal version of them you haven't got. The fourth role is chosen, the specific commitments you've deliberately taken on, the projects, the relationships, and the professional identities you've actually built, rather than just being born into. Cicero's four personae is, I think, one of the most useful frameworks in all of ancient philosophy for answering the question, how should I actually live, given who I am and where I am? It says, know your roles, understand what each one requires, and be excellent in each of them, using your reason consistently and without contradiction between what you know is right and what you actually do. As Cicero himself puts it, each person should hold on to their own character as long as it doesn't conflict with what's honourable, and not fight against their own nature. Act in a way that honours universal nature while also following your own. So let me bring all three levels together now, because the real force of this instruction only emerges when you see how they connect. At the level of universal nature, accept the rational order of the cosmos. Work with reality rather than against it. Accept what can't be changed without being bitter about it. And then recognize your place in something much larger than your own preferences. At the level of human nature, use the two capacities that are most distinctively yours as a human being: reason and sociality. Think clearly, examine your impressions and judgments honestly. Choose well, and do all of this not in isolation, but in relationship, embedded in the web of mutual obligation and shared life that makes up genuine human community. At the level of individual nature, build your actual life with your actual character, in your actual circumstances, in your actual roles, as well as it can possibly be built. Not someone else's ideal version, not the version that would look most impressive, the version that is genuinely, specifically, unmistakably yours, fully and excellently expressed. And here's what connects all three of them: reason, the same rational capacity that lets you perceive the logos in the cosmos, lets you understand what human nature requires and discern what your individual nature asks of you. Reason is the way in which the universal, the human, and the individual all become accessible, and through which they can be brought into alignment. This is what the Stoics meant when they said virtue is sufficient for happiness. Not that a virtuous person never faces hardship, but the person whose reason is well aligned, whose choices reflect what their nature at every level genuinely requires, is living as fully as it's possible to live. They are, in the deepest sense, at home in the universe that they inhabit. So what does living according to nature actually ask of someone living in the 21st century in the conditions of modern life? At the level of universal nature, it asks for acceptance without passivity. Modern life comes with an enormous amount of genuine uncontrollability. geopolitical uncertainty or technological disruption, economic volatility, entire forms of work and life being eroded and created faster than most of us can track. So living according to universal nature doesn't mean finding a way to insulate yourself from all of that. It means genuinely accepting that the rational order of the universe doesn't guarantee you stability, and that bringing your full, undistracted energy to what is actually within your control. And at the level of human nature, it asks you to resist two very specific contemporary temptations. The first is the temptation to live reactively, to spend your days responding to other people's agendas, the demands of your inbox, the pull of the feed, the expectations of the audience, without ever quite exercising that distinctively human capacity to choose deliberately what to pay attention to and why. The second is the temptation to live asocially, to reduce human connection to transactional exchanges, to treat each other or other people or as resources or obstacles, or an ends in themselves who share in your rational nature. At the level of the individual nature, it asks the most personally demanding question of all: are you actually living your life? Not the life social comparison tells you that you should be living, not the life your parents imagined or your professional world expects. The life that your specific character, your specific gifts, your specific values would build if they were given their full expression. Now, these are not small questions, and they don't have neat, permanent answers. They're the questions that the Stoic practice of self-examination, the morning review, the evening journal, the honest interrogation of your own motives, that's designed to keep alive throughout the years of a genuinely philosophical life. So, I want to close with Marcus Aurelius, as we often do, because his practice of living according to nature wasn't theoretical. It was the lived challenge of every single day of a 20-year reign. He wrote in one of the passages I find most quietly radical in the Meditations: at every moment, keep a tight rein on impulse, show reverence, take care, move deliberately, treat every human being as they deserve, as a rational creature made for community, not merely tolerated, but genuinely included in your concern. Made for community, not tolerated, but genuinely included. That's the social dimension of human nature expressed as a daily practice, not as a grand political gesture, just a quality of attention brought to the specific person in front of you right now. And I think that's the deepest practical consequence of the instruction to live according to nature. It's not primarily about your relationship in the cosmos or even your own inner life. It's about the quality of presence you bring to the people around you. Not because you're performing virtue for an audience, but because you genuinely understood that their rational nature and yours are expressions of the same underlying principle. Your reflection for this episode draws on all three layers. At the level of universal nature, where are you currently spending energy fighting something that genuinely can't be changed? And at the level of human nature, where today did you live reactively rather than rationally, or transactionally rather than genuinely? And at the level of individual nature, what is one thing that your specific character is asking of you that you've been putting off? 3 questions, 1 per layer. You don't need all 3. The one that produces the most resistance is probably the most useful. In our next episode, we take the social dimension of living according to nature and follow it to its fullest expression: Stoic cosmopolitanism. The idea that all rational beings are citizens of a single community, and with that extraordinarily radical claim means for how we live today. If this series has been useful, please like and subscribe and share it with someone who's trying to figure out what their life is actually for. But for now, keep calm, keep stoic, and I'll see you in the next one.